When it comes to storage, we always need more. That's why I bought these bins from Harbor Freight. They're good, not great. The fit and finish is exactly what you would expect for the price. It's just right for the hobbyist, where they sit on a shelf most of their lives, but they're not the right stuff if you're lugging these around to a job site every day. They have plenty of cups to store all the little bits that float around your shop. But by getting these, you create a bit of a nesting doll situation. Where do you store your storage? I realized that by solving one problem, I gave myself another. I started looking around the shop and realized I didn't have a whole lot of options. The challenge is finding the right storage device to store whatever storage needs storing, which is how I came to build this thing. In today's exciting episode, I'm making this rolling cart that has some unique specs because it needs to fit a few particular needs. Welcome back to Master of None. The design for this is dictated by a few things that aren't exactly associated with each other. I didn't get a lot of these organizers, but first, I need a cabinet that will hold these things and provide space in the future if I get more. But that doesn't mean that I can have empty space until then. I don't have any wall space to hang a permanent cabinet, so it's gotta roll around. I have some space up along the wall near the garage door, so that will dictate one of the measurements, the depth. I didn't want this to be top heavy, so I'll plan on these containers sitting side by side, and that'll set the width. It'd be nice to have the top available to set a container on and look through it without having to be on my tiptoes, but at the same time be strong enough to hold pretty much anything I can put on it. These organizers aren't exactly deep, so after measuring everything up, there will be a few inches between the wall and the door space, so we can add additional storage for something in this cabinet. But that space will have to be behind the organizers, so what do? Well, lumber cutoff storage seems like a good idea. Even though I'm in Texas, I don't own a pickup truck. I don't think you're really allowed to call yourself a Texan until you own one. Anyway, my lumber hauler is this, so I can't get full sheets of plywood in the back of it. In fact, I can't even get half sheets in it. Nope, I can only get 2x4 sheets. So if I need anything bigger, I'll have to get it delivered or rent a U-Haul. And for this project, neither option was cost effective, so I went with the little stuff. And that actually works out because I'm going to use 4 feet for the height, so no additional cutting. I'm using these spacers, which are the exact height of the pocket hole jig, so that the boards are nice and parallel as I'm drilling the holes in them. And yeah, the vacuum port only works when you turn on the vacuum. And speaking of pocket holes, this is the first time I'm using them on a project, so it's a big learning curve for me. I'm sure the screws would be strong enough to keep this thing solid, but I'm adding some glue to all the joints for that belt and suspenders confidence. I don't have clamps long enough, so I'm actually butting 2 clamps together to stretch the full side of this cabinet. On the right side of the screen is the base of the cabinet, and instead of using pocket holes, we're going to countersink some regular screws up into the sides. We'll do the same with the 2x4 base when we attach that in a minute or two. Because everything is going to be in compression, I'm confident a few screws on each side will keep this thing rock solid. I'm making the base frame from some scrap 2x4s so it's solid enough to secure the wheels I'll install and be plenty thick without worrying the screws might puncture the inside of the cabinet. I'll use pocket holes to secure the frame together and attach it with countersink screws in the same way as the cabinet bottom was built. And every once in a while, it's a good idea to make sure your chuck is nice and tight. I know that edge grain to long grain is not an ideal way to glue things together, but again, we're doing the belt and suspender solution. Keen-eyed viewers will realize I've got some extra pocket holes drilled there which won't be used, but I got carried away and was having way too much fun. You can't really see, but I've marked the side of the cabinet where I drilled the first set of holes. So now I'm marking the second location for these base screws to go. And here comes some of the ugliest glue up effort you've probably ever seen.
Sloppy.
Let's see here. Ooh, that should do nicely. Yes. I still want a washer on these just to make sure that we've got full purchase on that hole. Because I wanted the pocket holes to be hidden from the exterior view, I chose to put them on the inside. And without clamping everything nice and tightly together, it pushed it out and gave me a gap. Just enough gap to cause a rectangle to become a trapezoid. And that means all my shelves are different widths. So for each shelf, I want a divider. And I've got these spacers made up, and I don't want them up front, and I don't want them all the way back. So I've got this arbitrary distance. We're just going to put that in the front, find the center, glue it, and tack it just like that. Now the problem is, because these shelves are all different widths, I have to measure each one individually, and to be a little more precise and easy for me, I'm actually going to use the metric system. Haters can hate. Okay, here's what I'm planning to do. For each shelf, I'm going to measure its exact width and cut that number in half to find the exact center. Then I'm going to add 6 millimeters on each side of that center line to indicate the width of the half-inch spacer I'm going to install. After that, I mark its location on the center line with the spacer in the front so I know exactly where to attach it with glue and screws. Now that I've got these holes drilled, I'll use some blue tape to mark their precise location and transfer that to the spacer board. I'm actually going to use this tape to mark both sides of the spacer so that I can easily join two shelves together. I've installed two screws into the holes I drilled into the shelf, and they protrude just a little bit so I can easily align the shelf with the holes in the divider. Using the bench vise as a third hand makes it real easy for assembly. So after cutting my shelves and letting them sit overnight, it turns out number 3 has decided to cup on me. Not noticeable at all, is it? I'm not too worried about that cup because I'm going to have some spacers in between the organizers for each shelf so that it will help to lock them all together and form a nice rigid shelving system, I think. Yeah, anyway, here's what it's going to look like. So as you can read, this is the bottom shelf, and I've got these spacers holding it up, and I'm going to have one just during the glue up. I'm going to have this one in the middle as well to help provide rigidity as I stack all the shelves on these dividers. Now the idea is that the next shelf will go in with these spacers. And then I've already marked out where the bottom spacer is going to be in relationship to the top one. So we'll just pin nail it and glue it all together and make a nice rigid solid structure for all 5 shelves. So to help me with my pin nailing, I'm drawing these lines that wrap around the outside, and that way I have a decent chance of maybe getting half of them stuck properly and only have to hammer out the other half that poke through. I'm so good at pin nailing. It's horrible. So now that we've got our second shelf in place, we can't install the divider the same way we did with the first one because we can't connect it from the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue it in place. We're going to use this spacer that we used to determine the depth, and then we're going to use an old-fashioned wood clamp to hold it in place, make sure it doesn't topple. We'll glue the bottom part, and then when we put the third shelf in place, we'll pin it from the top, just like the second one. All right, now the fun part, that bowed shelf. So we're gonna do what we can, and we'll put some weight on it to see what we can do about keeping it in place. The one upside of gluing in a bowed sheet like this is that you don't really risk smearing glue all over the sides as you put it in place. So this weight takes that bow out of the shelf, so I'm sure the glue and staple gun will take care of that bow forever. Well, I let the third shelf rest for 24 hours and just took everything off, and it's very solid. I'm very happy with that. There's a little flex in the shelves right now, but 2 things to keep in mind. One, it's going to be holding organizers, so there's not going to be a whole lot of weight on it. And the second thing is that there will be a back to this, which will be pin nailed to the back of these shelves. So it's going to provide even more rigidity, and I think this thing's going to be rock solid and do exactly what I need. So with that out of the way, we'll finish these last two and then put the back on. Now with all the shelves in place, I flip this on its front and I will now mark the locations for all the shelves so I can easily pin nail them from the back. You'll notice I'm squeezing the back panel underneath the top shelf. That's to make sure that it's got even more rigidity and less chance of bowing over the years. After marking where the pin nails are going to go, it's time for some glue. Now it's time to take some measurements for the final piece in the back. The final part to install is this back pony wall for the storage of tall cutoffs. I didn't want this rear storage area to be fully enclosed because if something fell down into it, I'd never get it out. And if I place this near the top, it'd be harder to lift items in and out, so I think this is a good spot. And with that last piece in place, it's time for everyone's favorite pastime, sanding every square inch. My thanks to Travis over at Shop Nation for finding this paint color from Sherwin-Williams called Cyberspace. It is perfect for shop furniture. Once that dried, it is time to load this cabinet up with everything. Everything that fits, of course. So there you have it, storage for my storage and other stuff. I couldn't be happier with the way this turned out. This thing is rock solid. All this weight, especially the concrete bags on the bottom, there's no racking. It is solid and it's going to last a long time, I'm pretty sure. Obviously, there's really only two things that this was specifically designed for. First was all the cutoffs in the back here. That's actually holding a lot more than I thought it would. It's fantastic. And of course, storing all of the small cases from Harbor Freight. The bottom shelf and the top shelf, those are going to be changing whenever I'm working on a project or take care of that concrete. But it's doing exactly what I thought it would, which was store stuff and then some. So that's it for this one. Let me know if you have any questions or comments down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, if you liked what you saw, head over to my channel, take a look at some of the other videos I make. I don't do just shop furniture stuff. I do a lot of other things. Maybe you'll find some interest there, and who knows, maybe even hit the subscribe button. Anyway, that's it. Thanks, guys.